1. Marlon Brando's bad acting in the audition led to a historic role. When Marlon Brando first auditioned for The Godfather, his performance was considered bizarre and over the top by some of the casting team. He stuffed his cheeks with cotton balls to alter his voice and physicality, which at first seemed ridiculous. However, Francis Ford Coppola, who was new to directing major films, was impressed by Brando's commitment to the character and chose him as Vito Corleone. This decision is often cited as a turning point for both Brando's career and Coppola's career. 2. The iconic horsehead scene was not originally in the script. One of the most memorable and brutal scenes in The Godfather, the severed horse's head in the bed of the movie producer, was improvised during filming. The head was real, a prop created from a real horse's head, and it wasn't initially planned. Director Coppola suggested the change, believing it would make the scene even more shocking. Al Pacino was initially supposed to play a smaller role. Al Pacino's role as Michael Corleone was not as central in the original script. He was initially hired to play a secondary part. It wasn't until later in production that Coppola and the studio recognized that Pacino was delivering a performance that could carry the whole film, leading to a deeper focus on his character arc. Therefore, the movie wasn't initially expected to be a box office success. Despite the novel's popularity and the star-studded cast, The Godfather was initially considered too dark and violent to appeal to a broad audience. Paramount executives had little confidence in the film's commercial success. As a result, the movie's budget was tight, and many of the actors were not paid as highly as expected for their roles. 5. The film's realism was mostly due to budget constraints. The Godfather's gritty, realistic portrayal of mafia life wasn't just a directorial choice, it was influenced by budget limitations. The movie often relied on natural lighting and simple sets to save money, which created the stark and atmospheric look of the film. 6. The "I'll make him an offer he can't refuse" line was improvised. The famous line, "I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse," was improvised by Marlon Brando. Coppola was initially going to write the line differently, but Brando's version became an unforgettable part of the movie's lexicon. 7. The use of Italian-American stereotypes was disputed. Although The Godfather is often lauded for its nuanced portrayal of Italian-American culture, some critics and Italian-American groups at the time felt that it played into harmful stereotypes about mafia involvement. Coppola himself faced criticism for his portrayal, though he argued that the film was meant to depict the complexity of immigrant life, not just criminality. 8. The Godfather was originally going to have a different director. Before Coppola was hired, Paramount Pictures had considered other directors for The Godfather, including Sergio Leone, famous for directing The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Leone ultimately passed on the project, believing that making a film about the mafia would be too difficult. Coppola, who was not yet established, was eventually hired largely due to his success with The Rain People, a film that did not exactly scream mafia epic. 9. James Caan almost didn't play Sonny. James Caan, who famously played Sonny Corleone, was not the first choice for the role. The producers initially wanted someone else for the part, but after testing several actors, they felt Caan brought the right mix of toughness and vulnerability. Caan even turned down the role at first, but his eventual acceptance led to one of the most iconic performances in film history. 10. The Godfather book was almost never adapted into a film. The novel The Godfather by Mario Puzo was considered unfilmable by many at the time. It was a huge bestseller, but its themes of organized crime, family loyalty, and corruption made it a challenging prospect for adaptation. After the success of Bonnie and Clyde and other crime films in the 1960s, the industry began to rethink its stance on violent or morally ambiguous subjects, and it was ultimately adapted into the blockbuster we know today. 11. Coppola almost lost the job due to creative differences. Francis Ford Coppola was almost fired from directing The Godfather several times during filming due to creative differences with Paramount executives. They were particularly concerned about his pacing and how long the film was running. Coppola's insistence on using slower, more dramatic pacing ultimately resulted in a much more dramatic pacing, but not without major pushback from the studio. 12. The Corleone name was chosen for its meaning. The name Corleone wasn't randomly chosen. It is derived from a small town in Sicily and it has a direct translation, Heart of the Lion, from Italian cor meaning heart and leone meaning lion. The name was meant to reflect the strength and power of the character of Vito Corleone. It's a subtle but significant detail that gives weight to the character's symbolism. It's a subtle but significant detail that gives weight to the character's symbolism. 13th, the wedding scene was almost cut. The wedding scene, which opens The Godfather, is widely regarded as one of the most iconic in film history. However, it was almost cut from the final edit. Coppola and the editors felt it was too long, but he fought to keep it in, as he believed it set the tone for the entire film by showing the Corleone family's strength and complexity. And it was 14. The iconic The Godfather theme wasn't originally the main score. Nino Rota's haunting score became synonymous with The Godfather, but the film was originally meant to have a completely different type of music. Rota's original compositions were rejected by the studio, and only after he revised them did they embrace the more somber, iconic theme we know today. In fact, the score was so impactful that Rota won an Oscar for it, despite not receiving an initial nomination. 15. The famous "Leave the gun, take the cannoli" line was improvised. The famous line, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli," spoken by Clemenza, Richard S. Castellano, was not in the script. The line came about during filming when Castellano, who was playing Clemenza, ad-libbed the part about the cannoli after a scene where he had killed a man. It was a quirky and memorable moment, and Coppola decided to keep it in the film. 16th. The film's budget was extremely tight. Despite being a high-profile project, The Godfather had a relatively modest budget for its scope, around $7 million. This led to many creative solutions, such as shooting many scenes at night to save on lighting costs and utilizing smaller sets to maximize the budget. The film also had a 50-day production schedule, which was tight even for a movie of its genre. 17. The director and the lead actor did not get along at first. Francis Ford Coppola and Al Pacino did not initially have the best relationship during the making of The Godfather. Coppola wanted Pacino to play Michael as a more passive, naive character, while Pacino wanted to portray him as more aggressive and assertive. Their differences led to tense moments during filming, but by the end of the movie, both had found a shared vision for the character, making it one of the most iconic performances in film history. 18. The role of Michael Corleone was almost given to another actor. Initially, many people were skeptical about casting Al Pacino as Michael Corleone, as he was a relatively unknown actor at the time. Actors like Robert Redford and Jack Nicholson were initially considered, but Coppola and the studio ultimately went with Pacino. The decision proved to be a turning point for Pacino's career and helped establish him as one of the greatest actors of his generation. 19. The opening scene was filmed with real actors who were not actually actors. In the opening scene of The Godfather, where Don Vito Corleone listens to requests on his daughter's wedding day, many of the people in the background are not professional actors. Some of them were real Sicilian immigrants hired to fill the space, giving the scene an authentic, lived-in feel. 20. Marlon Brando almost didn't make it to the set. Marlon Brando's behavior on set was notorious. During the making of The Godfather, Brando was notoriously difficult to work with. He showed up late to the set, often didn't learn his lines, and had a tendency to be disruptive. However, Coppola believed in Brando's acting ability and managed to coax him into giving a legendary performance, which earned Brando an Academy Award for Best Actor. Final note. 21. The Godfather's influence on cinema was so great it led to a genre. The Godfather helped shape the mafia film genre and set the standard for how organized crime was portrayed on screen. It even influenced real-life mafia figures who later claimed to have been inspired by the film's portrayal of the mafia and its code of honor. It became a template for later mafia films and television shows, cementing its place as a cornerstone of American cinema.